Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're taking a look at the Ruike p671. This is a smaller knife from Ruike. They do have a couple of knives that are on the small end of the spectrum, but this one I think is the smallest. I could be wrong on that, and someone's welcome to correct me in the comments. I've been using this knife and carrying it quite a bit, and I wanted to go ahead and tell you about it. Before I do though, let me say this knife was sent to me for review by Ruike Knives Canada. And I will put a link in the description box to their website, because if you're going to buy this or some other Ruike knife in the next few days, you should go to their website and do it, because you'll be entered. Well, okay, if you go to their website and you're going to buy something, and in the description box on the order, not on this video, but on the order, you write Kevin Cleary P128 giveaway, you'll be entered into a giveaway for a P128. And so that giveaway is open until November 1st. So there's only a few more days, which is why I'm kind of moving this review up. I went ahead and purposely, kind of carried this knife and tried to really put it through its paces in preparation for this, so I could get this video out before the giveaway is done and over with. Anyway, now that we've gotten that out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at this knife. You can see there, this is an attractive Ruike design. It is definitely smaller than I normally like to carry. And, in use, I was still, I kind of would prefer if this were a little bit bigger. However, I have to say it served me quite well overall. So size and weight on this guy, this is 6.5 inches overall, 2 3/4 inches on the blade, 3 7/8 when it's closed. Okay, so just under 4 inches, 9/16 thick. Now this is a stocky little knife. Okay, it kind of puts me in mind of some of those little ZTs. I can't think of there's a Les George design that's quite small and stocky, 0900 I suppose. Anyway, this kind of fits into that genre. And I will say this, if anyone from Ruike Knives is watching, Matt, I hope at least you're watching. Anyway, if anyone from Ruike Knives is watching, if you would do like a 671 L or something and make this knife 8 inches overall or 8.5 inches, I think it would be a great design for a full-size knife. So I've got to put that out there in the universe, and maybe that will end up someday happening. 3.67 ounces is the weight on this, and that's a little hefty, okay? 3.67 ounces for a 6.5 inch knife is a little weighty, but if you take a look at what's involved here, like this is quite thick. There's a lot of carbon fiber. We've got a large stainless steel backspacer here. So it kind of, and fairly thick stainless steel liners. And so, the weight is not surprising when you take a look at the knife. All right. And by the way, 3.6 ounces, 3.7 ounces, I suppose, if we round up, is, it's not uncomfortable to carry. If you have this knife in your pocket, I've carried this a lot as a secondary knife, and I've also carried it a lot as a primary in preparation for this review. And this is not an onerous knife to carry in any way. Let's take a look at this blade. This is one of the things I really like about this knife, and it's a bit of a departure for Ruike Knives, and they've done something I like. Okay, so they've backed off just a little on the blasted finish. It's still blasted, but you can see the grind lines in there. So it's a lighter bead blast than they've done on a lot of their other knives. And, there's two things I don't like about bead blasting. One is I just don't like the finish, but two is it introduces more potential for rust. Now, 14C28N is nicely corrosion resistant, so it's not going to be a big problem, but it can become a problem, and it's more likely to with a bead blasted finish. So that's not something I'm totally in love with. But otherwise, and I will say it's toned down on this blade, so it's not nearly as much of a complaint as it has been on some other knives. Especially I find the Kershaws and some of the other Ruike models really go crazy with the bead blasting. So I like the finish on this blade. It's certainly a little more attractive than some of the others. I also like the design of this blade. It's reasonably thin behind the edge, 21 thousandths. It's 137 thousandths in the overall stock. So it's a pretty well balanced blade. Now there is a long pointy tip here, but it's not, let's see if I can get this to focus. It's not crazy thin out there. And I will say I've broken a few rules with this knife. I've been doing a lot of trim the last few days, and on a couple of occasions I have had to slide this down between some trim and wiggle it around a bit to get things to work right. And it's actually, so I've really put this through some serious paces, and it's actually worked out pretty well for me. So I've got to give some real props to this blade in terms of its usefulness. Obviously, I would like it if it had a longer cutting edge. I'd like it if the overall knife was a bit bigger, but for a small knife, this has served me very, very well. By the way, it does come extremely sharp. A mere polished edge on there from the factory. Now, I don't know if every single one will have this, but I mean, you know, I didn't get a special one or anything, so I wouldn't be surprised if you get that on yours if you go ahead and order one of these. So yeah, what do I think of the blade? I think it's a very nice blade. Obviously a little too short for what compared to what I normally use, but very useful, very sharp. I love 14C28N steel. I think it should be sort of the standard across the budget line. That would be fantastic. So yeah, no big complaints here. Let's move on to the action. And I guess the action is one of the things that we want to talk a little more about because this is a front flipper. Now that does kind of beg the question, does the front flipper still work well on a smaller knife where you don't have as much room to get your hand in exactly the position you want it? And what I would say about that is, yeah, it works fine. It did take me a little bit of practice to become proficient with this, as I think is going to be true of anyone who picks up a front flipper. You're going to have to play around with it a little bit and get comfortable with it. And I caught on to it pretty quickly, even though Matt from Rake Knives Canada was like, I don't know how I feel about the action on this knife. And I think he just found some awkwardness of the front flipper. And I'm sure given a few days time, he would feel the same way as I do. It does have thumb studs as well. And, I'm sure some people have thought, well, could we just forget the thumb studs? And, you probably could. You could make this exclusively a front flipper. I'm sure, many knives have multiple opening mechanisms because they're trying to sort of make everyone happy. If you want a flipper or a front flipper or, spider flick or whatever, you can do lots of different things. Well, it's pretty common to see two opening mechanisms. I will say this, the extra size on this, it is big, but the handle is quite thick. So if this was a really little thumb stud, I'm not sure how well it would work. As it is now, it's easy to access. It catches your thumb really nicely. Very, very comfortable to deploy. So, I'm not going to complain about it. And furthermore, it's located way back and has not been a problem at all when I'm trying to cut stuff. It doesn't get in the way. So for all those reasons, I'm quite happy with the deployment methods on this knife. Although, as I say, if you're not used to front flippers, it'll take a little bit of practice. Lock bar is nice and thick. I really like to see that. Lock up is very solid. It's easily accessible, and that's of course something that, again, you begin to look for and be a little bit picky about, especially if you're one of those guys who likes to likes to fondle their knives, and flip them and play around with them while you're watching TV or something. This is a knife you can easily do that with. There we go. I'll stop now. Try to keep you guys from going crazy. So yeah, the action is quite nice. It is on bearings, and I did take it apart real quick just to check it out. It's single row bearings, caged, the plastic caged bearings that we're used to seeing, but it works quite well. Really, really solid lockup in all directions. And I mean, that's pretty standard for rake knives at this point. So, I can't think of any rake knives where I had a problem with blade play. Not that they're not out there. I'm sure that somebody somewhere has had that issue, but I've been very fortunate, and I've had a ton of these knives. I don't know what number this is, but definitely more than 10. So anyway, I'm quite happy with the action and the lockup and the deployment. I have no issues there. So let's go ahead now and talk a little about the construction of this. And this is one of the things, again, like the front flipper, this stands out a little bit because this is definitely a stocky little knife. You can see it's thick layers of this carbon fiber. It might be laminated. Hold on, let me come off screen a little bit. No, it's solid carbon fiber all the way through, but it is the cheaper carbon fiber like what you see on the Rat Model 1 here. So thick carbon fiber scales, thick stainless steel liners, fairly hefty backspacer. Now this, if you could replace this with aluminum or titanium, I mean, whatever, but something a little lighter would possibly lighten up this knife by a fair margin, and that might be appreciated. But again, as it stands, it's not overly heavy. And the construction is very hand-filling. And I will say I like that. In a small knife, that's usually what puts me off, is when I grab it, I just feel like I don't have anything substantial. But this, you really do. You feel like, hey, I've really got something here. And that's because the handle is definitely thicker and stockier than a lot of knives of this size. You may not like that, but as I've been carrying it and using it, I've really come to appreciate it because of the extra comfort that that larger handle provides. Deep carry clip, not movable. So see, there's no holes there on this side, but we've got that typical Rake deep carry clip here, right side tip up carry, which is, that's what we're looking for anyway in most cases. Lefties are going to be left out a little bit on this one, but maybe they'll make a left-handed only version. Anyway, in terms of construction, the fit and finish is good. The components are good. The material choices I'm quite happy with. The only issue, of course, is it's a little bulky, but that's a purposeful design, and it's comfortable in hand for a small knife. Okay, yeah, is a Para 2 going to be more comfortable in hand? Obviously, because it gives you just more real estate for all your fingers. But for something of this size, it's quite good. So comparable knives here, I don't really have that many because I just don't own a lot of knives of this size. But like I would think of, the Para 3, the Rat 2, the Mini Griptilian, those kinds of knives would be, in a similar size category. I will bring in a couple of comparisons that are sort of budget priced liner locks to kind of give you a little bit of a comparison here. So there is the Bird Raven 2, which I really, really like. In fact, obviously a much bigger blade, not a whole lot more cutting edge, but certainly much more handle area, making it a little more comfortable in hand. Here is the Rat Model 1, which, bears some similarity to this. They're using sort of the same carbon fiber. And, I don't know, these knives just seem to kind of look like they go together to me. So I think I posted a picture with these the other day on Instagram. Also gives you an idea of size. Another knife that we'll bring in here is the Bestech Paladin. Not so comparable, but I mean, the idea is for a reasonably budget-friendly price, you're getting a fairly well put together knife, and certainly you're getting that from Rake here as well. Finally, let's throw a Para 2 in, just because everyone is so familiar with the Para 2 that it should give you a good idea of what kind of size you're looking at here. So that's what a 6.5 inch knife looks compared to an 8.25 inch knife. Okay, what are my overall thoughts on this? And for those of you who have complained that I never let you see the back side of the knife, normally the lock side of the knife, there you go. What are my overall thoughts on this? I really, really like this design. I like the option of the front flipper. If you're gonna make a small knife like this, I think it's nice for it to be a little bit stockier. You're really not gonna, you're not going to make it overweight. Okay, it's so small that you could double the thickness and it still would be a reasonable weight, although it would start to get a little awkward in pocket. But overall, I'm quite happy with this small knife. Obviously, you guys know I like the larger stuff. But if I kind of put my own preferences aside and ask, just as a performance question, does this knife work well? Does it work as expected? Absolutely. I really, can't say that I have some major issue with this knife or that, something stood out as just not working for me. The action is quite pleasant. It's easy to deploy. It's easy to lock and unlock. It cuts really well, and it's an affordably priced knife. So, and a cool design. So, I got to say, I think this is a real win for Rake knives. And, I say that knowing that unlike me, many of you guys watching this really appreciate the smaller stuff. So that's my overall take on the Rake p671. I think this is a really nice offering, and I think Rake has done a good job in adding something like this to their lineup, because there are lots of people out there who really look for something small, and it gives them the opportunity to have a front flipper in their lineup as well. One last reminder to those of you over at Rake Knives, if you would make this a bit bigger, build an 8.5 inch version, I think it would be a total win. Certainly it would be a knife that I would want to buy. So I think that could work as well. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I guess hit the notification button as well, since subscribing doesn't mean much anymore. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.